Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start today's video with a story where the tables turned fast on a driver who learned the hard way that road safety laws work both ways. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Careless driver gets fined, then sued after hitting cyclist with car door. I was reminded of this story recently after hearing about the passing of a former colleague, Jean. Jean was in her 60s, sharp as a tack, and absolutely devoted to cycling. Even during busy workdays, she'd take her bike out on her lunch hour, pedaling through town as part of her daily routine. One sunny afternoon, Jean was coasting down Main Street, keeping to the left and watching the flow of traffic. She was approaching a row of parked cars when it happened. The car door suddenly swung open right in her path. She had no time to swerve. Her handlebars clipped the edge of the door, and in a split second, she was on the pavement. The impact wasn't catastrophic, but it was jarring. She scraped her knee, her elbow throbbed, and her bike had a nasty scratch. Before she could even get her bearings, the driver leapt out, not to check on her, but to start yelling. "You've damaged my car door! Look at this! Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost?" the woman barked, pointing at the barely visible dent. Jean, still sitting on the ground, blinked in disbelief. I'm sorry you've got a dent, but you opened your door right in front of me. I couldn't stop in time." That only seemed to fuel the woman's outrage. "Don't give me excuses. You cyclists think you own the road. You're paying for this." A passerby, seeing the scene, rushed over and helped Jean to her feet. "Are you all right?" they asked gently. Jean dusted herself off, her voice calm. "I'm fine, thank you. I think it's just a scrape." She turned back to the driver. "It was an accident, but opening a car door without looking is dangerous." The driver folded her arms. "We'll see what the police have to say. I'm calling them." Jean didn't argue. "Fine, let's have them come." A short while later, 2 officers arrived. They took statements from everyone, Jean, the driver, and the witnesses who'd seen the whole thing. The witnesses confirmed that Jean had been riding safely and that the driver had flung the door open without checking her mirrors. The driver, still defiant, demanded, "I want her charged for damaging my car." One of the officers looked up from his notebook. "Ma'am, based on the accounts we've received, you're actually the one at fault. Opening a car door into moving traffic is a violation of road safety laws." "What? That's ridiculous," the woman protested. The officer shook his head. "It's the law. You could have seriously injured her. We'll be issuing you a fine and recording several infractions against your license." By the time they were done, the driver had racked up a hefty fine and a license suspension. Jean, meanwhile, was free to go home and rest. But that wasn't the end of it. Jean's brother, as it happened, was a solicitor. When she told him the story, he smiled and said, "So she wanted compensation for the damage? Let's give her exactly what she wanted, only the other way around." A few days later, the driver received a formal letter. It outlined her responsibility for Jean's injuries, the damage to her bike, and the emotional distress caused by her aggressive behavior at the scene. The total compensation requested wasn't astronomical, just a couple of $1,000s, but it was enough to make a point. To Jean's quiet satisfaction, the payment came through promptly. No argument, no drawn-out legal battle. The woman who had demanded money from her in the street ended up paying exactly that, only to the person she'd wronged. Jean returned to work not long after, her bike repaired and her knee healed, with the same easy smile she always had. She never bragged about what happened, but the sparkle in her eyes whenever someone mentioned car door incidents said everything. What a perfect dooring case, and a reminder that composure plus witnesses beats bluster every time. Jean did exactly what most of us hoped we'd do: stay calm, get statements, and let the law speak. Opening a car door in traffic's on the person opening it. The officer calling it out and the later compensation just closed the loop neatly. And our second story. Karen moved in temporarily, then turned my yard into a junkyard and got mad when I said enough was enough. In 2016, I finally bought my first home. Less than a month after moving in, my Karen of a relative got evicted from her rental because the landlord was selling the place. She just had a minor health issue and couldn't work yet, so I agreed, against my better judgment, to let her stay with me just for a little while. That little while turned into a never-ending circus. First came the drama with her oldest son, who was 14 at the time. He hated her habit, which I won't detail, but let's just say it wasn't knitting, and things blew up so badly that the police got involved. When the cops asked if she wanted him to stay or go, she literally said she'd rather face abandonment charges than have him back in her home. So guess who stepped up? Me. The dad was working a job that kept him traveling, so the kid ended up living with me full-time. Both parents even signed notarized papers making me his guardian for school and medical stuff. Less than a year later, her younger son got the boot too. Same situation, same result. My 3-bedroom home suddenly had 4 people in it, and because I didn't want the kids sleeping on the floor, I moved myself into the living room so they could have bedrooms. And that's when the hobby started. Karen and the boys began collecting everything. They'd buy junk trucks to fix up and sell. Spoiler, they never sold them. Haul in tires, scrap metal, broken tools, and random appliances. My yard looked like a backwoods car graveyard. At one point, I counted at least 6 dead vehicles scattered around my property. My neighbors were thrilled. And by thrilled, I mean silently judging every time they drove by. When the piles of crap got too big, I'd tell them to clear it out. They'd promise to get to it, then nothing would happen. And every single time the mess started attracting attention, I was the one outside hauling junk around. Fast forward to this past March, I got a letter from the county, clean it up or face fines. That was my last straw. I worked for days, dragging, hauling, and loading garbage into the back of my truck just to avoid the fine. When it was all done, I realized 90% of what I'd moved wasn't even mine. That's when I drew my line in the sand. I told both nephews, and by extension Karen, they had until 6 p.m. on May 31st, 2024 to get their stuff off my property. If it was still there after that, it was mine to sell or trash, no exceptions. Of course, they made excuses. We don't have a way to haul it. Where are we supposed to put it? I told them that wasn't my problem. They'd had years to deal with it. I was done. Then the passive-aggressive Facebook post started. The younger one began making vague rants about a certain someone who was throwing away his stuff and not giving him time. He blocked me, but my sister saw it. And of course, in our small town, everybody knew who he was talking about. The junk wasn't even the half of it. I had one major rule: no guests without my approval. Naturally, they ignored it and brought over thieves, addicts, and sketchy hang-around types. Over the years, I had a whole list of things stolen: my 4x8 utility trailer, a generator, a brand new post auger, still in the box, a pile of my tools, the starter from under my truck. Yes, they literally crawled under and took it. New truck parts from inside my vehicle, and then right before Mother's Day, I walked outside and discovered my motorcycle was gone. That was it. I called the police. They opened an investigation, and not surprisingly, the trail led right back to Karen's younger son and 2 of his friends. When the cops showed up with a warrant, they found my bike, along with a bunch of other stolen property stashed at one of their hangouts. The charges: theft over $5,000, possession of stolen property, and trespassing. When the officer called to update me, I couldn't help but ask, "So, do you think I'll be seeing him around anymore?" The cop actually laughed. Not for a while. Now my yard's finally clear, the junk cars are gone, and I'm sleeping in my own bedroom again. Karen hasn't shown her face. The younger one's facing court dates instead of loitering in my driveway. It took years of putting up with their crap, but in the end, they managed to clean themselves right out of my life. Whoa. You housed them, took guardianship of 2 kids, and then spent years living in a scrapyard they created, only to have your stuff stolen? You didn't overreact. You showed a ton of patience, and then finally did what responsible adults do. And our last story. The Amish treated my mom's pond like a free buffet. She made them pay, literally. My mom owns a stretch of rural property with a man-made pond she built back in the early 90s. She designed it herself, had it dug out, landscaped, and stocked it with some seriously expensive fish: bass, trout, koi for looks. She poured money and love into that pond. Unfortunately, the Amish in the area decided that her pond was basically a public buffet. All summer long, they'd wander over, poles in hand, hauling out fish like they were shopping for dinner. They'd leave when she confronted them, sure, but only because they knew they could just come back when she wasn't home. It's been 30 years of this nonsense, 30 years of catch and take without permission. She called the police more times than she could count. The answer was always some version of, "Ma'am, the Amish see all natural resources as belonging to God, and they might feel like they have an ancestral right to fish there, even though my mom built the pond around the time Nirvana had their first big hit record." They always promised to talk to the Amish, but nothing ever changed. Finally, one summer, she snapped. It started like always. She came home from work, and there they were, 3 Amish men in straw hats and suspenders, laughing and yanking fish out of the water. She parked her truck and walked straight over. "Off my land, now." One of them smirked, not even looking up from his line. "It's the Lord's water, lady." Her voice didn't rise, but it went ice cold. "Then the Lord can pay your court fees." That was the day she decided she was done letting them walk away with just a scolding. She called the police, and when they tried the usual soothing routine, she refused to let them leave until they filed a formal trespassing and theft report. From then on, it became a pattern. She caught them, called the cops, and insisted on official reports. She filed in small claims court for the cost of restocking the fish they took with receipts from the hatchery. She added damages for the bank erosion and trampled plants they left behind. The first time, they laughed in court. By the third time, they weren't laughing anymore. See, when you win a small claims case, that judgment sticks. Word spread in their community, but apparently not fast enough because they kept showing up. And every single time, my mom added another claim. After the 4th judgment in her favor, she decided it was time to make the pond physically off limits. She hired a crew to install a tall fence all the way around, complete with locked gates, bright private property, no trespassing signs, and a few well-placed security cameras that would make a prison warden proud. The next summer, she was out gardening when she heard angry voices by the fence. She walked over to see 2 Amish men shaking it like they thought they could rattle it loose. One of them yelled, "You can't keep us out forever." She smiled sweetly. "Funny, the fence seems to think I can." They stormed off, but she already had crystal clear footage from the cameras. The next morning, she took it to the sheriff along with her stack of prior court judgments. This time, instead of just trespassing, they got slapped with attempted property damage charges. Court date came, and my mom sat there calm as a saint while one of them tried to explain to the judge that wrong lot numbers on old property maps meant they thought they had the right to fish there. The judge took one look at the official property deed, the police reports, the video evidence, and the receipts, and made it a short day. Judgment for the plaintiff, triple damages plus legal fees. Triple damages hurt. Legal fees hurt worse. And because these weren't just civil claims anymore, the sheriff made sure they understood that the next time, jail was on the table. The Amish haven't been back since. My mom still stocks her pond, still enjoys it, and now there's a little extra satisfaction every time she sits on her porch watching the water ripple. The fence stands tall, the signs are big, and the cameras still roll, just in case. But the best part? A few months later, she heard from a neighbor that the main ringleader had to sell a prized team of draft horses to pay off the court judgment. She still grins about that. Your mom handled it exactly right. Turn a chronic, it's the Lord's water problem into a paper trail, court wins, and a fence that does the talking. Nature isn't free when someone paid for the backhoe, the liner, and the fingerlings. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.